Hello everybody, this is Lady Kaylah here and welcome to the Geekdom. Today I'm going to do a discussion video. I actually got what I believe I can do a discussion with in question form in my ask.fm box. And so if you guys have any discussion type questions or discussion topics that you'd like me to cover, just leave them where you would leave questions for me, and I'll leave a link to that in the description below. And we'll see how that works out. And I just decided to do this one. It's actually my newest question that I received, and it's going to be, is Star Wars fantasy, like Lord of the Rings or A Song of Ice and Fire, or science fiction, like Star Trek? I don't watch Star Trek, so I don't know if Star Trek is wholly science fiction or if it is science fiction fantasy like I believe Star Wars is. So this discussion video is going to be saying that Star Wars is fantasy and science fiction. Basically, science fiction is anything that uses elements that can be explained using scientific reasoning. Now, it's science fiction, so here's the catch. The scientific reasoning doesn't actually have to be based on our world and real science. It doesn't necessarily even have to have the potential to scientifically exist. It just has to have a scientific line of reasoning explaining as to why it does exist. It doesn't necessarily actually have to. So that's exactly what Star Wars does, because Star Wars has alien races and it has ships, or spaceships to be precise. Those are all things that use scientific lines of reasoning to explain its existence. We don't actually have spaceships, we don't actually have alien species like in the Star Wars universe, but those are all scientifically explained, or can be explained scientifically. But there are also fantasy elements, and I don't necessarily think I will go so far as to say that it's fantasy like Lord of the Rings or A Song of Ice and Fire, but it definitely is fantasy, because fantasy are things that can't be explained using scientific lines of reasoning. And midichlorians aside, if you just look at the original trilogy and you don't include those things, because that is a scientific explanation as to why the Force exists and all that. The Force originally is depicted as something religious and kind of like a mystical energy that can be manipulated, and just it's just mystical. Everything about it is kind of just all mysticism, because you even have skeptics in the original trilogy. The religion is actually kind of brought up, and none of it is scientifically explained, except for if you look at the prequels. But if you're going to shake your finger and be like, no, I'm not going to ignore that the midichlorians exist, that the Force is scientifically explained, I'll give you other examples. Looking at the prequels, we have Anakin's birth. Everything about that is mystical. Everything about that is just not scientifically explained. It is a very fantastical birth situation, and it's kind of a reflection on famous religious and mythological tales of, oh, no father, virgin mother. Anyway, that aside, let's say, well, you know what, she could be lying. We also have other things like prophecy, which, again, are things that are not scientifically explained. I guess if you want to say, well, the midichlorians are a scientific explanation to the Force, and then the Force allowed them to be able to come up with a prophecy, I guess you can make that line of reasoning, but scientifically, I'm still going to say that that doesn't even make sense. You still can't use scientific lines of reasoning to get to that conclusion. It's still mystical. So I'm going to say that it is science fiction fantasy. That's my take, but if you do want to connect the dots enough to make it seem like there is scientific explanation for everything that occurs in Star Wars, I will gladly listen to your side of it, but I'm going to say sci-fi fantasy. You might argue for one or the other. Actually, I'm not even going to accept arguments saying that it's not a science fiction at all, because it is a science fiction, but I will listen to arguments as to whether or not it has fantastical elements. So just let me know your opinions. I'm going to post this up and see what you guys see or say or write. I don't know. Anyways, I'll talk to you guys later. Remember, leave discussion topics in the ask.fm, or that way I can collect them all, because they're just going to get lost if you write them in the comments. Also in the description below are links to my Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, all that good stuff, where I have other discussions that sometimes don't even make it to video form. So if you want to be a part of that, go check those out. Thank you for your time. Bye.